Most people believe war erupts from chaos, from emotion, from random decisions made in smoke-filled rooms by leaders who lose their temper or miscalculate their power. But history tells a darker, structural truth. War is never random. Conflict emerges when pressure reaches a breaking point, when resources tighten, when economies strain, when empires fear decline, and when power becomes unstable. Every time war erupts, someone is positioned to win long before the first shot is fired. The winners are not chosen by chance. They are chosen by preparation, by strategy, by the cold mathematics of power. And right now, we are watching these same forces align once again. War does not simply happen. It emerges from economic fault lines that have been widening in plain sight for years. You may not see it now, but the pattern forming today is the same pattern that led to the greatest conflicts in history. Stay with me. My name is Marcus Blackwell. I am not a financial advisor, but I study the hidden mechanics behind global conflict, the financial fractures that precede it, and the historical cycles that shape the rise and fall of nations. I reveal the structural forces behind war, the economic incentives that fuel it, and the powerful entities that stand to gain while ordinary people pay the price. My purpose is simple: to show you what is coming before it becomes unavoidable, and to help you build resilience in a world growing more unstable by the day. I do not dramatize the future. I expose its structure. Because once you understand how this system truly works, the uncertainty you feel finally makes sense. To understand what is coming, you must first understand what has come before. War has never been about ideology alone. It has never been about speeches, flags, borders, or even military might standing alone. War has always been about advantage. Every major conflict in history was triggered when one group saw opportunity and another became too weak to resist. Before every war, the world witnessed the same signals, the same shifts, the same economic distortions that quietly prepared the battlefield. These signals are now emerging yet again, only this time on a scale unprecedented in human history. Look at the ancient world. Rome did not expand because it loved conquest. It expanded because its economy demanded resources faster than peace could supply them. The empire needed grain, metals, labor, and wealth to sustain its legions and its roads. When the peaceful avenues of accumulation dried up, conquest became the mechanism to secure what was necessary. The rival empires of Europe did not fight endless wars because of random disagreements. They fought because economic power was shifting, and warfare was the instrument through which that shift was decided. Look at the 20th century. The great powers that entered 2 world wars did so not because they wanted destruction, but because the financial strain of the pre-war era made conflict inevitable. The winners were those who anticipated the shift, positioned themselves early, and used the chaos to reshape the world in their favor. And after every major conflict, the world was rearranged, not by chance, but by those who had built the foundations of post-war influence long before the fighting ended. This is the truth the public rarely hears. War is an economic reset disguised as conflict. It is the mechanism through which power is redistributed, debts are erased, industries are restructured, and dominance is reestablished. And every time the world approaches the late stage of a debt cycle, every time currencies weaken, every time empires struggle to maintain influence, the probability of conflict rises. We are living through that phase now. Look closely at what is happening on the global stage. The global economy is strained under unprecedented debt. Nations are waging quiet battles over energy, technology, and currency dominance. Alliances are shifting. Trust between world powers is fading. Inflation is eroding the middle class across continents. And beneath all of this, countries are repositioning their military assets, strengthening their supply chains, and competing for the resources that will define the next century. This is not random, this is structural. Before every war, there is a moment when the old order begins to weaken, and the new order has not yet formed. That is the moment when opportunists rise. That is the moment when calculations are made. That is the moment when conflict becomes profitable for those who are prepared. When you study the patterns, you see it clearly. Before the First World War, industrial nations were trapped in rising costs and shrinking margins. Before the Second World War, economic depression pushed entire populations toward desperation. Before the Cold War escalated, global power was divided between competing models engaged in a systemic struggle for influence. Before every major transition, financial instability made conflict the path of least resistance. And today, this script is unfolding once again. The part no one wants to acknowledge is that war is often triggered not when nations are confident, but when they are desperate. When debts grow larger than budgets can manage, when domestic unrest rises, when economic growth stalls, when political legitimacy weakens, leaders look outward for solutions. Conflict becomes a distraction. It becomes a tool. It becomes a way to unify fractured populations by giving them a common enemy. And for those who profit from war, this desperation is an opportunity. Because someone always profits, someone always gains, and someone always positions themselves long before the first spark ignites. War may devastate millions, but it enriches a select few. This is not a conspiracy. This is observable history. But the deeper truth is that the winners of war are rarely nations. Nations lose soldiers, economies, stability, and decades of progress. The winners are those who understand the financial mechanics behind conflict, those who control supply chains, those who control energy, those who control currency, those who control the technologies that decide the battlefield. The winners are the entities that emerge with more power than they had before the war began. To see this pattern in real time, look at Venezuela. Once a powerful oil-exporting nation with some of the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, Venezuela's collapse has become a geopolitical flashpoint that illustrates how economic crises can feed strategic competition. After decades of mismanagement, economic contraction, and sanctions, the Venezuelan economy ceased functioning normally. Its sovereign debt ballooned into one of the largest unresolved defaults in the world, with total external liabilities far exceeding national output, creating a fragile and unstable economic foundation. Its economy, once fueled by oil exports, became entangled in one of the most complex debt webs on the planet. As the country defaulted and sank deeper into crisis, internal governance eroded. Then, in early 2026, a dramatic shift occurred when United States forces conducted an operation that led to the capture of President Nicolas Maduro, drawing international scrutiny, geopolitical tension, and widespread debate about sovereignty and power. This was not simply a political event. It was an economic event with global ramifications. Under the surface of the headlines, what was happening was a realignment of energy leverage. Venezuela's state oil company, long crippled by sanctions and underinvestment, suddenly became the subject of intense negotiation and strategic maneuvering. The U.S. government moved to control Venezuelan oil revenues, declaring a national emergency to protect these funds from seizure by private creditors and to foster stability in the region. This action placed control of Venezuelan oil cash and future exports into a geopolitical tool rather than a national resource. And make no mistake, oil is more than just fuel. It is the backbone of modern industry, of military logistics, of global supply chains. Nations that control energy sources, especially in times of tension, gain leverage far beyond their borders. Historically, those who controlled coal routes controlled empires. Those who controlled oil in the 20th century could rebuild or destroy economies. Today, the nation or coalition that can stabilize oil supplies during disruption wields strategic influence that reshapes diplomatic alignments. Today, the situation is even more complex. In the wake of the political upheaval, the United States signaled possible easing of sanctions to facilitate oil sales and economic recovery, with talks underway to release billions in International Monetary Fund resources to support rebuilding efforts. But at the same time, Venezuela's debt remains unresolved, attracting speculative investors and distressed debt funds that stand to profit if a restructuring succeeds. This combination of crisis and opportunity perfectly illustrates the economic mechanics behind structural conflict. A failing economy becomes a bargaining chip. Those with capital and strategic patience can position themselves to benefit from reconstruction and realignment, even amidst chaos. Worse, Venezuela's potential oil production recovery, if and when infrastructure is rebuilt and sanctions allow higher output, could impact global oil prices over the next decade, further shifting the economic balance of power among energy producers. This collapse did not happen overnight. It was built from years of economic distortion, currency instability, foreign debt burden, and political fragility. And in its collapse, we see the pattern that precedes many conflicts: economic desperation turning into geopolitical competition. To see who wins in this coming cycle, you must look at the mechanics shaping the world right now. First, energy. Energy is the foundation of power in any era. Nations that control energy resources or the flow of energy inevitably gain leverage. In the 21st century, this includes both physical energy and digital energy in the form of data infrastructure that depends on vast electrical and network resources. Venezuela's instability has created opportunities for global powers to reposition influence in Latin America through energy access. Second, currency. Currency is the blood supply of global conflict. Wars are not won by firepower alone. They are won by who can finance the battle and sustain an economy under strain. When a currency weakens, a nation weakens. When a currency loses global trust, its influence collapses. Currency competition is intensifying as blocs form that reduce reliance on traditional reserve currencies. Third, technology. The battlefield of the 21st century is not only land, sea, and sky, it is digital territory. Nations that control information networks, cyber capabilities, artificial intelligence infrastructure, and resilient communication systems gain strategic advantage not only in conflict, but also in shaping the post-conflict world. Fourth, supply chains. Modern conflict is fueled by logistics. Nations that control the flow of goods, materials, and manufacturing capabilities will shape the outcomes of future conflict cycles. The fragility exposed during recent global disruptions showed just how dependent nations are on foreign sources for critical components. Fifth, debt. No nation can sustain conflict if it is drowning in unmanageable debt. Empires that collapsed under military pressure first collapsed under financial pressure. Today, heavily indebted nations are losing strategic ground, while those with stronger balance sheets and deeper access to capital are expanding theirs. These forces reveal the shape of the winners long before any battle begins. They are nations that control energy resources, nations that hold monetary trust, nations that lead in technology, nations that dominate supply chains, nations that maintain financial resilience. These are the pillars of power in the coming era. But the winners are not only nations. Private entities play an even larger role in modern conflict than ever before. Technology giants that control digital infrastructure, data networks, and platforms of communication will gain influence comparable to nation-states. Defense contractors developing next-generation systems will shape how conflicts unfold. Financial institutions managing global capital flows will influence reconstruction phases, while energy conglomerates will determine who retains access to affordable power. And yet, the most overlooked winners in every era are individuals, not those who cheer for war, but those who understand the cycles behind it, those who prepare long before the world wakes up, those who protect their wealth, their stability, their communities, individuals who diversify their assets, individuals who understand the role of currency in conflict, individuals who reduce their reliance on fragile systems, individuals who prepare quietly rather than react loudly. History shows that in every era of conflict, a small percentage of the population emerges stronger. They do not rise because they are lucky. They rise because they see the signs and act early. This is where you must take the lesson into your own hands. War may be global. Its consequences may be massive. But your response must be strategic and grounded. You cannot control the geopolitical stage, but you can control your position within it. Prepare your financial life as if uncertainty is inevitable, because it is. Build resilience into your assets. your income, your skills. Understand that the world is entering a new power cycle where old assumptions no longer hold. Don't expect leaders to admit the truth. By the time they do, the winners will have already been chosen. Diversify your financial base across assets that perform in different economic environments. Educate yourself on how currencies respond under stress and how debt burdens can shape national policy. Focus on skills that are indispensable regardless of economic cycles. Strengthen your community networks and prepare for a world where local support may matter as much as global supply chains. And here is the part you must remember above all else. War is never random. Someone always wins. Someone always positions themselves ahead of time. And someone always sees the shift before the chaos arrives. You are being given the chance to be among them. The chance to understand the cycle before the headlines confirm it. The chance to prepare before fear overtakes the crowd. When you study the past, the future stops being frightening. It becomes predictable. It becomes structured. It becomes navigable. Those who prepare quietly in the calm position themselves to endure when the storm arrives, while those who ignore the signs are left reacting when it is already too late. In every conflict cycle, the winners are never chosen by chance. They are chosen by strategy, by positioning, and by understanding the deeper forces that move nations, markets, and human behavior. And in this moment, as the old order weakens and the next one has not yet fully formed, the choices you make now will shape where you stand when the world shifts. If you want to stay informed as these evolutions unfold, if you want early warnings and clear insight before events reach the headlines, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is where I document the patterns most people overlook, so you can prepare while there is still time. Because the wise prepare quietly, while the unprepared panic for all to see.